There is a battle for truth, or at least around truth, a battle about the status of truth and the economic and political role it plays. As RKelly sits in a federal jail in Cook County awaiting trial on an almost endless flurry of sex crime charges, the 52-year-old singer must be wondering to himself where it all went wrong. Why, after 30 years of him remaining almost untouchable, do the people no longer believe him? For a time, he seemed to be a famous individual who had merely been accused of rape, sexual assault, and pedophilia, but at least he was innocent until proven guilty. Now, his reputation seems to be as a famous rapist and pedophile who just so happens to be a popular artist. What happened? It is here in this perspectival distinction between the accused famous person and the famous abuser that we want to answer the question for RKelly by focusing on regimes of truth, a term coined by philosopher Michel Foucault. We are not concerned about the individual truths or facts that can be discovered or excavated and therefore definitively determine whether RKelly is a rapist and pedophile. When talking about regimes of truth, we're talking about the political relations surrounding truth, relations that regulate or allow statements of facts to be imbued with a truth content that itself reinforces the rule or norm responsible for regulations in the first place. As Daniele Lorenzini says, regimes of truth are, quote, the strategic field within which truth is produced and becomes a tactical element in the functioning of a certain number of power relations. Foucault was adamant that truth and power are connected. For Foucault, the truth is invented, sustained, and legitimized through technologies, methods, and laws that are intrinsically political. When understanding what it means to be political, we follow Lorenzini in recognizing that, quote, politics has to do not only with institutions, but with the complex and constitutive field of power relations within which we ordinarily live. Power relations which are contextual and provide meaning to our lives today, but would perhaps seem alien to someone from the medieval period. For these reasons, we can say the truth is not eternal. It is not something discovered or excavated from a realm outside of our own. Truth is malleable, and it is an invention. Furthermore, the truth is not true in itself, nor does the power of truth reside in truth alone. Foucault says, quote, truth is a thing of this world. It is produced only by virtue of multiple forms of constraint, and it induces regular effects of power. The obvious question arises, doesn't this just render all truth as relative and therefore meaningless? Isn't this mere perspectivism? Not exactly. But this is not a nihilistic or relativistic perspectivism. Here, perspectivism is fully positive and affirmative. According to Leonard, quote, perspectivism is the affirmation of multiplicity and interpretation. Rather than asserting, paradoxically, that truth does not exist, here it is asserted that many truths exist. So is Foucault saying that objective knowledge about the world is impossible? Short answer, no. Objectivity means that objects are available to social inquiry, and the type of inquiry that is socially acceptable is precisely determined by regimes of truth. Thus, as Deere says, a regime of truth is, quote, the site where truth names the constraints and modalities required of both subject and object to enter the positivity of reality and engage in a set of possible relations. So why focus on Robert Sylvester Kelly? RKelly's story provides a useful vehicle for analyzing how different regimes of truth function. Known as the Pied Piper of R&B, Kelly is a famous singer with multiple Grammy-winning hit songs and incredibly successful collaborations with other artists. Some of his songs, like I Believe I Can Fly, have gained such widespread appeal so as to be woven into the social fabric itself.
It was everywhere. Kindergarten graduations, high school graduations, I believe I can touch the sky, and in churches.
It was just massive.
This is someone we want to like. We want to wear their artistry in our everyday lives. For many people, RKelly is the type of figure whom it is inconvenient to dislike or abhor because of the effects their art produces in us. RKelly generates a type of truth precisely because he is a popular individual with power. As a result, Kelly has remained successful for 3 decades despite a long pattern of alleged abuse of underage girls. In discussing Kelly, we are reminded by his apologists that Kelly is innocent until proven guilty, that RKelly won his previous court case in 2008 for child pornography. This presumption of innocence is supposed to guarantee that an individual has the right to exist unimpeded by the state. We are told we must suspend judgment until after a new trial has occurred. Whoopi Goldberg silenced anyone who attempted to condemn Bill Cosby before he was tried in a court of law.
I say this because this is my opinion, and in America, still, I know it's a shock, but you actually were innocent until proven guilty. He has not been proven.
We are reassured that the purest truth can only be found within the framework of due process. RKelly and other apologists would like you to believe that the truth of the judicial system is a higher form of truth waiting to be discovered, that the truth of the judiciary system is not itself controlled by regimes of truth. And once the judicial system has discovered a truth, it is true for all time.
But the past is relevant with you with underage girls.
Absolutely no, it's not.
Why?
Because for one, I beat my case. When you beat something, you beat it.
You were acquitted.
We can't double jeopardy me like that. You can't. It's not fair. It's not fair to nobody. When you beat your case, you beat your case.
The implication here is that because he was acquitted by the judicial system under the rules of due process, this means his viewpoint, his truth, is true, i.e. not up for debate. His side of the story won the day in court, which gives it a truth value of true, while the state's case against him was given the truth value of false. How can RKelly be so confident that his past behavior is irrelevant to his current predicament? Because, as Foucault says, quote, the sentence that condemns or acquits is not simply a judgment of guilt, a legal decision that lays down punishment, but is also an assessment of normality and a technical prescription for a possible normalization. In the judicial system, due process is the magic armor of legitimacy that enshrouds the trial, allowing a theoretical form of truth to develop. As an example of just how powerful a trial outcomes can be, look at the parents of Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage, 2 women currently living with RKelly. The parents currently allege that their daughters are being held against their will and have been brainwashed by the 52-year-old singer. However, when they first met Kelly, they were not as concerned with the singer's prior predilections because the courts had found Kelly not guilty.
I think it was back in 2008, we did hear some type of, allegations that he had a trial that was going on, but the courts found him not guilty at that time, so we didn't think nothing else of it.
Everybody knew Kelly's background with females. You kind of suppress the thought.
He's never been found guilty on any of the charges. So, if you look at it, from a legal standpoint, you think, okay, maybe it wasn't any truth or validity to it, because people make accusations on people all the time. It doesn't mean it's actually true.
Rape apologists decry this era of Me Too, where alleged rapists are tried, convicted, and executed not by the cold, disaffected, almost sterile judgments of the judicial system, but by the public body itself, in what journalist Diane Dimone described as Salem witch hunt era tactics. If we were to listen to RKelly's attorney, Stephen Greenberg, we might be led to believe that facts remain in a state of epistemic uncertainty until they have been tested in the judicial arena.
I've never been a victim of a sexual assault, okay? I can't walk in the shoes of someone who has been, but I know that I deal with facts, and if you're gonna make these kinds of accusations, then, let's test them and let's see if they're true. And we're gonna find out they're not true because there's no evidence of them.
But is this the function of the judicial system? Does the judicial system create truth values that are immune to the winds of time? Foucault describes the function of judicial practices as, quote, the manner in which wrongs and responsibilities are settled between men, the mode by which society conceived and defined the way men could be judged in terms of wrongs committed, the way in which compensation for some actions and punishment for others were imposed on specific individuals. A judicial inquiry seeks to answer several questions for society. Who did what? Under what circumstances? At what moment? Who is responsible? And what is their punishment? Society expects a certain standard, a process whereby grievances can be assigned as legitimate or not. Given this, there is a kind of truth production that occurs from trials, despite the fact that these truths may obfuscate what actually occurred. In some instances, truth values invented in court can change several times, or, as is much more common, the facts carry multiple truth values that contradict each other but compete over which perspective is most dominant. In the surviving RKelly docuseries, a juror from Kelly's 2008 trial revealed that despite several women, like Lisa Van Allen, testifying to the sexual abuse of minors by Kelly, he didn't like the way she looked or dressed, so he disregarded everything she said.
I just didn't believe them, the women. I know it sounds ridiculous, the way they dress, the way they act. I didn't like them. I voted again. I disregarded all what they said.
This is an instance where Van Allen's facts were shrouded by forms of racism and sexism and then delegitimized. On rare instances, and usually against enormous political power, there are even situations where the truth value of criminal or civil liability is entirely reversed. For example, the Central Park Five, a case involving 5 juvenile males, all of whom are people of color. The incident involved a white woman who was brutally sexually assaulted while jogging in New York Central Park and left in a coma for several weeks. The 5 juveniles were coerced into confessing and spent between 6 to 13 years in prison until another man already serving time in prison confessed. His DNA was later confirmed to be that of the woman's rapist, and the 5 men falsely convicted had their convictions vacated. Another example in the opposite direction of innocence would be O.J. Simpson. He was acquitted of criminal liability for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman, but was found guilty in a civil trial for wrongful death. At the time of his acquittal, a majority of Black Americans believed Simpson was not guilty. Meanwhile, a majority of white Americans believed he was guilty.
Should find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of Penal Code Section 187.
Racial ideology strongly influenced what facts individuals believed to be either true or false. It is clear that judicial practices do not create everlasting truths, and many of the truths created at trial are far from settled fact. But why do certain regimes of truth persist for so long? And why are some falling by the wayside? Again, we must analyze the power relations surrounding these truths. Foucault describes 5 different historically significant power relations that characterize truth. 1. These power relations center on the types of discourse involved and the institutions which produce them. 2. The external demands involved in various competing truths. 3. How a truth is communicated through society. 4. The political and economic apparatuses that control truth. And 5. The underlying ideologies that guide an interpretation of a specific phenomena. How do these relations map out with support of RKelly? And these are just some of the possible examples of this. The primary discourse occurring is that of the criminal justice system, centered around due process of law, innocent until proven guilty, prohibition on double jeopardy, and so forth. There is a demand for RKelly's truth from his promoters, record labels, fans, collaborators. RKelly apologists communicate through music journalism, urban word of mouth, the Black church, social media. The control apparati involved are the judiciary, media, and music industry. And the apologist ideologies vary, from normalization.
RKelly, yeah, he a wild motherfucker. Everybody in entertainment is a wild individual, right?
Every night, celebrities have women who offer themselves to them. It's not like that in this celebrity life. Niggas don't have to grab arms. Niggas don't have to do that to women because women are infatuated with us.
Blaming the victim.
17. Okay, then she got her own car. She drive to the hotel to meet RKelly. So all along the whole time from what I'm listening, the kid was already controlling adults anyway. Just like how she was controlling her parents, I'm quite sure she was being aggressive and controlling the situation with RKelly. But what I'm saying is she was already a manipulator.
Fast little girls. Okay? These fast little girls, these teenage girls who need to just take a shower and relax a little bit. But the blame is always on the child, the young girl, to regulate the decisions of mature men.
Racial politics.
That's what they do, especially black motherfuckers. When you get up there, when you start getting old, they coming back for you. They coming back and take your pedestal. They gonna try to take your pedestal. That's what they gonna do. They gonna try to take your pedestal. I don't care how, black motherfuckers, they gonna try to come, they gonna find something on your way back.
This is another plan to destroy the black man. Fans that feel like they are trying to destroy a legacy of another great black man.
Depoliticism.
I am a RKelly fan. I'm here for the music and nothing else.
His music did not put them up in them rooms. His music did not have sex with the underage kid. It wasn't the music. So people boycotting the music. It's good music.
These constraints allow society a measure upon which to designate facts as true or false. These institutions and the power relations that constitute them allowed RKelly's truth to prevail for 3 decades, that he isn't a pedophile or abuser, that his accusers just want money or fame, and so on. This is because RKelly generated a lot of money for record labels and promoters, because it is easier to sweep allegations under the rug than for other artists to admit they collaborated with a pedophile, because suddenly all the music that is stitched into the fabric of one's life becomes so problematic as to cause an identity crisis. Yet, the tables are turning for RKelly and other powerful abusers. Society is beginning to believe survivors. The reason for this is because a contrary regime of truth, one which has existed all along, is outmaneuvering the R&B singer's truth. In recent years, we've witnessed the rise of the Me Too movement, and despite right-wing pushes, a desire to place more validity on the experiences of sexual assault survivors by taking their allegations as seriously as we would allegations of other crimes. The regime of truth in favor of RKelly no longer has the status it once had. We could perhaps trace this not just to the Time's Up movement, which has insisted and invented the conditions and institutions upon which sexual assault survivors' discourses are deemed valid, or at least more so than previously, but also the Black Lives Matter movement, and the synthesis of these two movements in the MuteRKelly movement, which specifically focuses on uplifting the voices of black female survivors of sexual assault.
What we come to do, MuteRKelly! And when we gonna do it? Now! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Black girls! Lives matter!
We could map out the power relations of this regime as well. The primary discourse is not just the criminal justice system, from the desire to punish abusers, but also the healthcare system, with the effects of abuse on the body, and psychological discourses on trauma from sexual and domestic abuse. There is a demand for survivors' truth from other survivors, allies, healthcare workers, and therapists. Survivors communicate through the sensationalism of media reporting, the various academic studies like sociology, psychology, criminology, philosophy, and healthcare forums like survivor support groups. The control apparati involved are the judiciary, media, and music industry, but also the healthcare industry, and the institutional support provided by solidarity between survivor support groups. And finally, the ideologies involved are #believe survivors. We must take survivors' accusations as seriously as other crimes. Critiques of rape culture, feminist politics, #Black Lives Matter. So why are these changes happening? It's because there is a change of the political, economic, and institutional regimes which regulate truth production. Foucault states, quote, "It's not a matter of emancipating truth from every system of power, which would be a chimera as truth already is power, but of detaching the power of truth from the forms of hegemony, social, economic, and cultural within which it operates at the present time. The power of truth is, slowly, being disentangled from the patriarchal power structures that allow a rape culture to invest itself into society." Of course, this battle over the status of truth is not over. Despite his music label dropping him as a client, and his inability to perform shows or tour internationally, largely because he's in jail, RKelly still has his supporters for various ideological reasons. After the Lifetime docuseries finished airing, his streaming numbers doubled. Kelly will still have his day in both federal and state courts. Only history will reveal to us which regimes of truth will prevail, and even then, those regimes will still be mortal. Thank you for watching my very first video for my new channel. Special thanks to themantle.com for publishing the essay this video is based off of. Themantle.com is smart content for the global citizen. The Mantle publishes globally diverse voices who offer unique insights into social, political, and cultural subjects to educate the intellectually curious, bridge cultural gaps, and foster empathy. If you liked this video, drop a like, and if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. You can also see more of my thoughts at strangecornersofthought.com.